Welcome to this week's Frank Fridays. I am sitting with Ellie Hayworth, CEO and founder of her eponymous communications consultancy, with a strong commitment to promoting intrepid ideas in art and design. Ellie has grown her business to command a full scope of client services, including, but not limited to, public relations, content development, business strategy, strategic partnerships, events, speaking engagements, you name it, Ellie is your lady. And we are so happy that this week we get to sit down with Nina Mdivani, who is a Georgian-born and New York-based independent curator, writer, and researcher. Her academic background includes international relations and gender studies from Tbilisi State University, Mount Holyoke College here in New York, and most recently, museum studies from City University. Nina's book, King is Female, was published in 2018 in Berlin and explores the lives of 3 Georgian women artists and is the first publication to investigate questions of the feminine identity in the context of the Eastern European historical, social, and cultural transformation of the last 20 years. Please do check it out. Nina is a regular contributor to outlets such as Art Diffuse, White Hot Magazine, Eastern European Film Bulletin, Indigo Magazine, and Art Spiel. Nina, excitingly, has 2 upcoming shows in New York, one at the NARS Foundation in Brooklyn in March, and Defied Logic at Ivy Brown Gallery in May. I will let Ellie start us off.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Karlina. And Nina, I am very, very excited to be speaking with you today. Needless to say, you are multi-hyphenate, and I think we have a lot to talk about. But I would just love to kind of kick us off by asking you to perhaps kind of contribute your introduction. You are, as Karlina mentioned, from Georgia, and you are based in New York now. I'm curious if you can give us just a little snippet of your personal story.
Well, of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my curatorial and writing practice. And thank you for the very generous introduction, Karline and Ellie. It's very nice to meet you and just to talk and discuss things with you. So just to give you a brief idea, yes, I'm from Georgia, Eastern Europe. I came here in 2003 to study in Mount Holyoke on international scholarship. I studied international relations and gender studies, as Karline mentioned, and then I moved to New York. But also at the same time, art was something that always sustained me as a person, even in college and even later on when I worked at the United Nations, at Columbia University, doing social research, international politics research. So it was something that was kind of a theme in my life. And I was very excited always when I had an opportunity to maybe contribute as a freelancer to some publications about art, or writing for galleries as a freelancer then. So it was kind of a path that might not be traditional curatorial path, but I'm very grateful for this kind of different background because it gave me a more rounded understanding of the events. And I feel it informs my curatorial practice because I have this grounding in history and some economics, so some of the issues that are that represent larger context. So, and then so as Karline mentioned, I had this opportunity to write the book, King is Female, that actually put me in real kind of touch with what I always wanted to do. In other words, conversing with artists and immerse myself in the art field. And then it kind of led to curating shows. And then I have been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years consistently and working on the shows. And also feel like New York gives you a lot of opportunities to kind of to work in the direction that you want to push yourself into.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm so curious to hear, are you finding a community of Georgian artists in New York? Are these relationships that you facilitated early on in your career or in your lifetime in Georgia? How are you kind of bridging the international gap between New York and Georgia?
Well, I think, to be honest, I feel it's one of my missions to actually represent my country and Eastern European art here, because in a way, it's a very small niche, And there is not too many curators, unfortunately, who work with these themes and this historical context, although it's very rich and it has many traditions. And there is very interesting and complex way to engage with this. So, and to answer your question, in terms of working with different artists, I feel like these connections that I have coming from Georgia and all the connections that I got here from, working in different fields, it helps me to emphasize their presence in a more holistic way, not only as artists, but also with individuals coming from a very different mind frame, coming from different historical past. So it comes together with these exhibitions. And I feel like for me, these exhibitions are not only shows as much as just a forum to present the conversation that needs to be there.
So. I love it. And I think maybe, Nina, to that effect, one of the more recent positions that you held was curator in residence at an organization, a nonprofit in Brooklyn. And right. This seemed to be kind of timed, whether appropriately or inappropriately, with the pandemic. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit about how that role shifted, how you saw maybe challenges as opportunities, just what that entailed for you over the past year.
So, as a curator for residence, curator in residence for Kunstraum, I was there from 2019. So it was from March 2019 through May 2020. So the bulk of that time was pretty normal still, but the last few months, they were challenging also because I had to stage my own show. That was kind of the ending part of this residency. That was New York meets Tbilisi, Defining Otherness. So I opened it, and then the pandemic started the next week. It was really crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But just to tell you a little bit about Kunstraum, I really admire what they're doing there because it's a non-profit space. It's run by artists. Artistic hub, but at the same time, it's a curatorial platform that invites independent curators. And it just came to my mind also that right now they're looking for next curator in residence. So the opportunities are there. So in that way, it was very interesting for me to work with different artists and different curators because I had to stage some exhibitions with them. Then in the end, I staged my own show. So it was a good learning process to get into. It's logistics. It's a lot of good challenges. And then so with this the exhibition that I curated. New York meets Tbilisi, Defining Otherness, Part 1 and Part 2. So Part 1 was presented at Assembly Room in collaboration with Kunstraum on the Lower East Side. It was a 2-women show. And then the second part was staged at Kunstraum. It had 8 Georgian artists and 4 American artists. So it was in dialogue of 2 different cultures. And oddly enough, so it was even before the events of last year happened. But otherness is something that interests me because I feel like a lot of our life is defined in this kind of in context of what we are not. We're defining ourselves in a position of what we are not, kind of not as a society, as human beings as well as So it's on many different levels. This is something that's there, but we don't even discuss it. And I think last year actually it changed and we start discussing it openly in terms of inclusivity, in terms of all this social changes that need to take place. And for me, for example, now that I'm studying museum studies, it's I'm shifting to a different kind of thing. But for example, right now studying how museums used to represent a very specific kind of mindset and very specific worldview. Now how we need to change as a culture, and also museums are interesting because they represent what we value, right? So we need to change that too. So it's exciting to study it right now. So in terms of the show, it opened and then we had to close for the pandemic. I was able to create a panel with 5 curators and art historians. It was very interesting. And was, oddly enough, I had to go back to Kunstraum to do that panel there. It was the first time that I ventured and the whole city was in lockdown. It was such an eerie experience. It was, beginning of last April.
I can imagine. It was a ghost town.
Yes, it was, But in a way, I feel like I'm very happy that I still did the show, because it kind of started good conversation in Georgia. It kind of created interesting discussion. And as a curator, you do these exhibitions, but I feel they're all like steps that lead to the right conversations. It's like the steps, the prompts to a discussion. So that's how I look at it.
Absolutely. And I think, perhaps one of the things that resonates so much with me is this idea of kind of a constellation of platforms. So you work as a curator, you put in, extensive hours of research, and you really do the work on showcasing the artists in a very thoughtful way. But you're also doing so by, writing, providing speaking engagements. It's this kind of multifaceted platform. So one of the questions that, as I was kind of preparing for our conversation today, I'm just curious to hear how you navigate what you take on as a writing project, what you take on from a curatorial perspective, where those perhaps meet and where those are a bit distinct from each other.
Thank you for the question. Yes, for me, I see writing as a kind of not complementing my curatorial practice. It just organically grows out of it. For example, when I do research on an exhibition, writing helps me to crystallize my thinking about the specific exhibition. For example, with the show that's coming up at NARS, This Is Not My Tree, that it's about immigration and environment and looking at different facets of immigration through environmental issues. I'm right now in the process of writing a couple of essays on this theme that includes actually conversations with artists about it. And it kind of helps me to really develop the ideas. So this is, I don't separate creating from writing, and I think it really helps you if you're comfortable with writing when you're a curator, because it helps you to flesh out the ideas sometimes. Yeah. I think also maybe another thing is Georgia is not the culture that teaches you public speaking that much. So maybe it's something that in the beginning it helped me, because I just felt more comfortable writing than speaking. Now I feel like I have more practice with it.
I love it. Well, you certainly do it very astutely. So I think, you're doing it quite well. One of the questions, and I think this is a perfect segue, I admittedly don't have a very large frame of knowledge about the kind of arts infrastructure and the ecosystem in Georgia. And I understand that you worked on a grant initiative, which was geared specifically to artists in Georgia during the pandemic. Can you just maybe speak a little bit to some of those efforts and what needs the artists had?
Sure. So Georgia is an old country. It has been there since 5th century, and it has very long traditions of art. So artistic traditions that pretty much carry through all the through centuries. So it's something that it's part of the DNA. In terms of the cultural kind of identity. But at the same time, unfortunately, art is not really supported by the state there. Whatever is happening, there are quite a few very dedicated galleries and curators who try to facilitate the process, but there are not too many events, sustained efforts from the government. So it was very important for me to initiate this, the grants system last year for the artists. So we had about 50 applications, and I did it together with Ria Kaburia Foundation. And we distributed some of it. So we selected about 10 artists. Some of them received monetary prizes. Some of them had an opportunity to go to the residency program and just stay and create there. And it was pretty helpful for the artists, as I know, and they were they received this opportunity to go to a different environment and to have a peace of mind, which is something that we all crave in this atmosphere. And in terms of the Georgian art scene, there are interesting artists working there, of course, but also there are not too many opportunities to showcase them outside of Georgia. So there are a few galleries, for example, the gallery in Berlin, 68 projects in Kornfeld Gallery that consistently they showcase Georgian artists. There are a few galleries here, but it's not something that happens in a systematic way, because it's a small country and you need to create awareness. And I feel like as a curator, it's one of my responsibilities to do that, because it's different country, it's different history, and at the same time it's globalized in a different way, because it's on the crossroads of Asia and Europe, and it has both of the mentalities, so it's interesting to showcase it here.
That's really fascinating. And I think it is very interesting just to hear all of the different ways that you brought Georgian art, both in New York, but also you are sitting in front of a beautifully curated show that was in Berlin. You are not in Berlin presently. Can you tell us a little bit about the show behind you, and also what your kind of work life, now that we're working remotely, what that kind of looks like as well?
Yes, so the virtual background is from the showrooms and Beings. Rusudan Hizanishvili's solo exhibition at 68 Projects that was there from November till January. It was a solo exhibition. So Rusudan is very interesting Georgian artist. She's based in Tbilisi. And I was very grateful to the gallery that they were able and willing to leave it as a physical show rather than moving it on, because I think specifically with Rusudan, her paintings need to be really seen in person. So, and of course, I mean, last year shifted my schedule a lot. I was scheduled to go to Georgia. It didn't happen because of everything. But at the same time, I feel, it gave me opportunity to kind of ground myself a little bit more, to maybe do deeper research and write some essays that didn't have time to engage with before. So as much time. As you know, in New York, it's kind of hectic mostly. So I wouldn't say it was unproductive. It was a great year for me professionally, although emotionally, of course, it took a toll of all of us. So yeah, sure. This year we'll kind of normalize it a little bit. Let's hope so.
That is true. And I think this is a perfect segue into, we have kind of a toolkit of a few concluding questions we love to ask, just kind of about professional practice at Art Frankly. We speak a lot about best practices and kind of career insights. What is one thing, Nina, that either you do every day or that you would advise other professionals in the art sector to do every day that kind of keeps you either connected or productive?
Well, I mean, it's of course as a, it's a kind of maybe cliche way of, but just checking your social presence. It's important. It helps you stay connected. Of course, we kind of we mentioned Clubhouse, and it's something that's new. It's exciting, and it's kind of, we need to maybe get on this platform in some way, get involved because it's fresh and new. I read ArtNet. It's my probably the favorite channel, Art Forum, so just to stay informed. But in general, I would say, to be honest, sometimes it is so many things that I need to do in this kind of in art-related field that I try to kind of balance it with also that's something non-artsy, something that's kind of sustains me, like literature, or just or just going to real museum or real exhibition. I feel like, honestly, this last year we've been so much digitalized that we need kind of counteract. Just going for a walk in the park is also something that we need to do as a professional sometimes too, because it kind of gets you in a different mode that makes you more productive in the end.
I agree. No, and it's certainly, I think, leading a well-balanced life is always fruitful in different aspects of your life. Nina, perhaps the kind of last question that we can round out on, Karline alluded to, you have two exhibitions forthcoming, one with the NARS Foundation and another one this spring, I believe. So can you maybe tell us where we can stay in touch and how we can see some of these projects come to fruition?
Sure. Thank you. So yes, the exhibition at NARS, this is not my tree, it's 14 artist group show that's opening in physical space in the main gallery in Brooklyn on March 26th till April 16. And it will be a show, as I mentioned, immigration, invasive species, hierarchies, how artists can engage with these themes, and how we can kind of analyze human experiences through this more kind of environmental concepts. So I just thought it will be interesting to present it in that way. The second show will be Defied Logic. It will be 4-artist show at Ivy Brown Gallery in the Meatpacking District. It will be on view in physical space also, May 1st through May 31st. So, and I'll keep you in touch about the specifics.
Amazing. We love it. So maybe just we're about to kind of wrap up. What is one positive takeaway, perhaps from the last year or just from this conversation? What is one thing you want all of us to walk away from?
Well, yes, I think in terms of the positive takeaway from last year, I feel like we realized much more than we did before that we are as strong as the people who surround us. We are kind of, the more connected we are to this the more synergy we have with the people who sustain us. As artists or as writers or family members. I mean, we just cannot be isolated as human beings. It just keeps us in a wrong mental state. So we just need to be as connected as we can. I know it's hard to think of anything else that has more, that is more important than that from last year at least. And just staying with people who needs us and who we need, and just share warmth.
Yeah,
human connection.
I think that is an exceptional takeaway, and I just have to thank you again. These conversations are so energizing and refreshing, and it's just really been a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. And as Nina mentioned, Kunstram is accepting applications for their new curator in residence, and you can see that post on Art Frankly. So do sign up and log in and become a part of that community as well. It's a really great nonprofit, as Nina was saying.